The morning started like any other on the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, cameras rolling, the crew preparing for another long day of experiments. But by noon, everything changed. Travis Taylor's van was found abandoned behind the Mesa, its doors unlocked and its equipment still running. What investigators claimed they discovered inside that van was so disturbing that the footage was locked away and never aired. Audio files, photographs, and something else. Something that shouldn't exist on Earth. Before we uncover the chilling truth of what was found inside, make sure you subscribe, because this might be the most disturbing discovery in the history of Skinwalker Ranch. It was just after sunrise when the producers first realized something was wrong. The crew gathered at the base camp as usual, the Utah air still cold enough to see their breath. Every vehicle was accounted for except one. Travis Taylor's van was missing. At first, no one panicked. Travis had a reputation for wandering off before dawn to calibrate sensors or chase a lead on his own. But as the hours stretched and radio calls went unanswered, that familiar scientific curiosity gave way to a rising unease. Around 9:20 a.m., Caleb spotted tire tracks leading off the access road, heading toward the back of the Mesa, a restricted area where the radiation spikes had once nearly hospitalized Thomas Winterton. Brandon Fugel ordered a small team to check it out while cameras stayed rolling from a distance. When they crested the ridge, there it was. Travis's gray van, parked half-buried in the red dust, door slightly ajar, hazard lights still blinking faintly. Though the battery should have been long dead, the air around it felt wrong, heavy, metallic, humming just at the edge of hearing. Caleb called out twice before approaching, his boots crunching on the gravel. The smell hit him first, sharp and sterile, like burnt electronics mixed with something sweet, almost chemical. Inside, the driver's seat was empty, the key still in the ignition. A digital Geiger counter on the dashboard flickered erratically, jumping between normal background radiation and bursts that would have required a nuclear source. In the back, they found a setup that didn't belong on a reality show. Monitors bolted to the walls, wires running into the floor, dozens of notebooks filled with equations that didn't match any known experiment conducted for the series. Someone, likely Travis, had been living in that van, sleeping there, working there, documenting something off the books. A single camera mounted above the rear door was still recording, its red light blinking like an unblinking eye. Caleb radioed Brandon, his voice barely steady. "We found the van. You need to see this yourself." When Brandon and the crew arrived, they surrounded the vehicle in silence. The only sound was the faint clicking of the Geiger counter and the low hum beneath their feet, as if the Mesa itself was listening. No one could explain the symbols scrawled in white chalk across the back window, a spiral surrounded by 3 intersecting lines, Travis's handwriting, and just below it, a message etched into the dust: "Don't open the case." When the crew finally entered Travis Taylor's van under Brandon Fugel's orders, they expected more of his scattered notes and research gear, not what they actually found. Wedged between the driver's seat and the passenger floorboard was a small black recorder, the kind used for field notes. The red light was still flashing, meaning it had been running for hours after Travis vanished. Caleb pressed play. At first, all they heard was static, a soft hiss that built into a rhythmic clicking, like Morse code, but irregular, organic. Then came the voice. It was Travis, low, deliberate, and strained. "It's responding. The pattern's changing every time I speak," he whispered. There was the sound of movement, a door opening, and then something else. A metallic groan, deep and resonant, vibrating through the van's speakers. The crew froze as the pitch shifted into a higher frequency, one that made their earpieces crackle and their stomachs twist. Eric Bard, the team's lead technologist, recognized the waveform on the recorder's display immediately. It wasn't random noise. It repeated every 47 seconds, identical intervals, layered with harmonics that no natural signal could produce. "That's not feedback," Eric said, his voice barely audible. "That's intelligent." Next to the recorder sat Travis's laptop, still open despite the drained battery. Its last active window showed an audio spectrum analysis. The waveform patterns were symmetrical, mirror images folding into each other, forming shapes that looked almost like symbols. The timestamps told a disturbing story. Travis had been recording the signals every night for the past 8 days, always at the same time, 3:07 a.m. The same hour the the ranch's surveillance drones went blind. And the same hour orbs had been filmed hovering above the triangle. As the team continued searching, they found a folder of unmarked thumb drives taped under the dashboard. Each was labeled in Travis's handwriting: Respondent 1, Respondent 2, Phase 3, Transmission Attempt. When Eric loaded the first one into his tablet, it refused to open. Not corrupted, but encrypted with a custom code. The second drive did open, revealing another audio file that played without prompt. This one wasn't Travis speaking. It was a voice, distorted, mechanical, and layered, repeating his words from the first recording in reverse. Eric ripped his headphones off, his face pale. "That's his voice," he said, "but it's not him." The air inside the van grew heavy again, static building on the radios. Brandon ordered everyone out. As they backed away, the recorder on the dashboard clicked by itself, unprompted, and started playing one last line. Travis's voice, trembling and distant, whispered, "Stop listening." It's listening back. Once the immediate danger of the audio devices passed, Eric Bard noticed a stack of Polaroids pinned against the inside of the van's rear doors. Dozens of them, all developed, each marked with Travis Taylor's small, controlled handwriting along the white margins. The first few looked harmless enough. The Mesa at night, shots of the triangle field, what appeared to be long exposure experiments capturing faint light streak. But the deeper the crew dug, the stranger the images became. One photo showed an outline in the dirt, a perfect spiral burned into the soil, surrounded by 6 equidistant depressions like claw marks pressed into stone. Another displayed symbols carved into the canyon rock, faintly glowing under UV light. But it was the third set that changed the atmosphere completely. The sequence began with a photo of Travis's reflection in the van window, his face pale, eyes hollow, holding a small flashlight. The next photo, taken seconds later, showed that same reflection, except now a second figure stood behind him. It was human in shape, but wrong, stretched, distorted, its outline blurred, as if caught mid-vibration. The final image in the series captured only the figure, standing directly beside the van, one hand flat against the glass. Underneath it, Travis had written, "He followed me here." When Caleb spread the photos across the hood, Brandon Fugel's face drained of color. Each picture was time-stamped between 3:05 and 3:10 a.m., the same hour the transmissions from the audio files had been recorded. The pattern wasn't coincidence. Whatever Travis was documenting, it was communicating through both sound and presence. But there was more. Several photos had faint reflections that didn't belong. When enhanced by Eric using spectral filters, glowing eyes appeared in the negative space. Not white, but red, faintly luminescent, almost infrared. Eric froze when he realized the reflections weren't coming from the camera's flash or the environment. They were internal light sources inside the van. Brandon ordered the rest of the images sealed, but one slipped through. An unnamed production assistant uploaded a scan online, and within hours, forums exploded with speculation. Users noticed something chilling buried in the pixels, a pattern of dots across the figure's chest, arranged exactly like the triangular coordinates of the ranch's magnetic hotspots. "That's not an image," Eric whispered, examining the original. "That's a map." When the lights in the command tent flickered minutes later, no one dared to speak. The connection between the photographs and the phenomenon had crossed from visual evidence into something else entirely, something that felt aware. When investigators finally cleared the back of Travis Taylor's van, they found 3 heavy metal containers wedged beneath a tarp, each sealed with industrial clamps and lined with radiation warning stickers. The air grew colder the closer they got to them, as if the van itself exhaled something sterile and metallic. The first case was labeled in Travis's familiar handwriting, "Gamma response, do not open." But curiosity outweighed caution. Against Brandon's order, Caleb unlatched one corner. The lid creaked open with a hiss. Inside lay shards of blackened material that shimmered faintly under the flashlight beam, fractured, irregular, and warm to the touch. Eric Bard swept a handheld meter over them, and it instantly spiked into the red. The fragments pulsed, faintly vibrating, as if responding to the the proximity of the human bodies around them. It wasn't just radiation. The energy readings came in pulses, rhythmic and patterned, mimicking a frequency, almost a heartbeat. Travis had kept meticulous notes beside the case. His handwriting was hurried, desperate. One page read, "The fragments hum only near the Mesa. When removed, they fall silent." Another line below it was scribbled so deeply into the paper that it tore, "Material reacts to sound. 18 kilohertz equals response. Feels alive." Inside the second case, they found smaller, smoother objects, coin-sized metallic discs coated with residue that shimmered in colors no one could name. When exposed to UV light, they refracted into impossible angles, bending illumination around themselves instead of reflecting it. The instruments malfunctioned just trying to record them. Then came the third case. It was heavier, colder, and unmarked except for one faint word carved into the lid: heart. When they cracked it open, the air inside shimmered like heat rising off asphalt. Resting inside was a cylindrical capsule made of an unknown alloy. The moment Eric lifted it, every electronic device within 10 feet shut down. Cameras froze. Radios screamed static. The capsule vibrated for exactly 3 seconds, then went still. Later analysis revealed that its mass didn't match its size. It weighed almost double what its volume should allow. Inside Travis's notes, one chilling passage explained why. "The capsule amplifies local field resonance," he wrote. "It doesn't contain power, it feeds on it." The crew backed out of the van in silence, their skin tingling, hearts pounding. The fragments, the discs, the capsule, none of it resembled any known human technology. And yet, Travis had been cataloging it carefully, as if studying something he already understood. As Brandon looked back toward the Mesa looming in the distance, he muttered under his breath, "Whatever this is, he brought part of it back with him." The Geiger counter inside the van clicked twice more before going completely silent. Then, in that sudden stillness, every crew member felt the vibration again, deep beneath the ground, rising through their feet like the slow heartbeat of the desert itself. Hidden under the driver's seat, wrapped in a piece of torn tarp, was Travis Taylor's field journal. At first glance, it looked like every other research log he'd kept: neat handwriting, timestamps, measurements, standard procedure. But as the pages turned, the writing shifted. The entries became erratic, fragmented, almost paranoid. The first strange note appeared 3 weeks before the van's discovery. "The Mesa is not reflecting signals anymore. It's replying." Every few pages, a new pattern emerged. Strings of numbers, strange diagrams resembling constellations that didn't exist. One sketch depicted the Mesa as a hollow pyramid, with tunnels converging beneath a sphere marked source scribbled next to it. "It hums louder when I whisper back." Then came the shift in tone. The sentences turned desperate, as though Travis wasn't documenting an experiment anymore. He was recording a conversation. "It knows I'm listening," one entry read. "The signal only stops when I stop thinking about it." Another, barely legible. "If you hear it too, it's already inside." The final 10 pages were torn and burned at the edges. Across the last full sheet, in thick black ink that bled through several layers, Travis had written the same sentence over and over: "Do not open the heart." Beneath it, faint impressions suggested something had been pressed into the paper, circular indentations matching the size of the metal capsule found in the van. Brandon Fugel flipped through the pages in silence before finally saying, He wasn't writing notes anymore. He was confessing. That night, the production crew swore the journal itself emitted a low buzz whenever left unattended, a vibration so subtle it could have been imagination, but no one volunteered to keep it overnight. It was sealed in a lead case before sunrise, and as Caleb later admitted in a whispered interview, I think Travis knew the van wasn't just storing data, it was containing something, and he was losing the fight to keep it inside. As investigators prepared to tow Travis Taylor's van off the ranch, Eric Bard noticed something odd about the floor. The metal beneath the rear mat gave off a faint echo, hollow where it should have been solid. Kneeling down, he pried at the edge with a multi-tool until the lining lifted, revealing a hidden seam. Beneath it was a small latch welded into the frame, disguised under layers of dust. With gloves on, Caleb forced it open, exposing a narrow compartment sealed with heat-resistant foil. Inside lay a single object, a cube roughly the size of a human fist, wrapped in what looked like aged burlap. When Eric unwrapped it, the van's radiation meter chirped to life again, not in random spikes, but steady, measured beats. The cube was matte black, cold to the touch, etched with patterns too precise to be carved by hand. They looked like circuitry, but the material wasn't metal. It seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. The moment Eric lifted it, every camera in the van glitched. The footage stuttered for exactly 3 frames before freezing on an image that none of the crew ever forgot. A flicker of blue light radiating from the cube like veins of lightning. Travis's notes, found tucked inside the compartment beside it, were even more unsettling. Object activates near the Mesa. Syncs to seismic patterns every 23.2 seconds. One line read, possible transmitter or containment key. Another note, scribbled in smaller handwriting, said, when I brought it back, the hum followed. It's not supposed to be here. They placed the cube on a containment tray, and immediately every compass within 50 feet rotated toward it, not north, but down, beneath the Mesa. When Brandon saw the data feed spike, he stepped back. That's not reading as radiation, Eric muttered. It's directional energy. It's signaling something. Caleb, staring at the ground, whispered what no one else wanted to say. Then, something's signaling back. That night, the cube was transferred to a secured case and taken off the property. The truck carrying it made it only halfway to the lab before the GPS failed and the dash cams blacked out for nearly an hour. When the vehicle arrived at its destination, the cube was gone. No signs of forced entry, no damage, just an empty case and the faint smell of ozone. When Eric reviewed the footage frame by frame, the final image before the blackout showed a faint blue flash filling the truck's interior, the same pattern captured in Travis's van. He paused the feed, staring at the frozen frame for a long time before muttering, "It didn't disappear, it went home." Later that week, Brandon Fugel authorized Eric Bard to review the van's dash cam footage, a redundant security system Travis had installed months earlier without telling production. The files were damaged, corrupted by the same electromagnetic interference that plagued every experiment near the Mesa. Yet one segment remained intact, a clip time-stamped 2 nights before the van was discovered. At first, the footage showed Travis pacing outside the van, agitated, running his hands through his hair, muttering into a handheld recorder. He appeared to be alone. Then, he stopped suddenly, glancing over his shoulder toward the Mesa. The audio spiked with that same high-frequency pulse from the cube, a tone that distorted the entire feed. He shouted something, but the words were lost in static. When the sound cleared, his voice was hoarse, panicked. "It won't stop answering." Travis opened the van's rear doors and leaned inside, half hidden from view. For nearly 3 minutes, he stood motionless, staring into the dark interior as if something unseen was there. Then his body jerked violently, as though hit with a jolt of electricity. The cameras glitched for 6 full seconds, filling the screen with bursts of white and blue static. When the image returned, Travis was gone. The doors were closed. The footage jumped forward abruptly. An unexplained cut lasting exactly 6 minutes and 13 seconds. In that missing window, no data recorded, no sound captured. When the feed resumed, the van's headlights flickered once, then off. The last frame showed the reflection of the Mesa in the windshield. For just a fraction of a second, something moved, tall, thin, humanoid, its outline pulsing in sync with the tone still faintly echoing through the audio track. When Eric enhanced the frame, his hands shook. The figure wasn't standing in front of the van. It was standing inside it. Brandon ordered the footage locked away immediately, but before he shut the monitor off, Eric swore he saw something impossible. The figure's reflection tilting its head toward the camera and smiling. After the van was hauled away, Skinwalker Ranch fell silent in a way that unnerved even the most seasoned investigators. Equipment readings flattened. The electromagnetic bursts that once plagued the site vanished overnight. It was as if the land itself had gone still, holding its breath. But beneath that quiet lingered something heavier, a sense that whatever had been inside Travis Taylor's van wasn't gone. It was watching. For days, crew members reported faint vibrations under under their boots, a steady pulse, like a buried engine deep beneath the mesa. Drones flown over the site refused to stabilize, spinning violently before crashing in perfect symmetry around the same coordinates where the van had been found. When Eric cross-referenced the data, every crash aligned with the cube's pulse frequency, the one that vanished from the transport truck. "It's syncing with the land again," he whispered. "The signal's home." Then, during a late-night review session, Caleb noticed something strange in the surveillance feeds. At exactly 3:07 a.m., the hour stamped on Travis's secret recordings, the van's parking spot began to flicker faintly with thermal light. No visible source, just a shape, rectangular, glowing at the edges, as if the van was still parked there, but invisible to the naked eye. The next morning, Brandon ordered the team to stay clear of that area. Yet, curiosity won. Eric set up a sensor grid along the perimeter, recording low-frequency audio across a 12-hour cycle. What it captured made his stomach drop. Beneath the hum of static, a faint whisper looped at irregular intervals. It was Travis's voice, distorted but unmistakable, repeating the same phrase he'd once written in his journal: "Do not open the heart." By the time investigators retrieved the file, the whisper had changed, evolving, splitting into two overlapping tones, one human, one mechanical. When slowed down, the second voice formed coherent words: "Still here." Brandon sealed the area immediately. The official report listed equipment malfunction, but the crew knew better. Weeks later, the van reappeared in a storage hangar miles from the ranch, delivered without explanation, keys in the ignition, battery drained to zero. Every surface inside was coated with a thin layer of ash. There were no signs of forced entry, just a single message burned into the passenger door from the inside: "It's not over." Since then, no one has spoken publicly about what they found. Travis Taylor returned to filming but avoids any mention of that night. When asked directly, his response chills everyone who hears it. It wasn't evidence, it was communication, and whatever it was trying to say, it's not done talking.